Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining Golden Gate Stories, the place where stories that seem impossible come to life. Today, we begin a journey filled with surprises and high-stakes drama. She fired the wrong guy. Now he's the black CEO of her company. This is not just a tale of sweet revenge, but also an inspiring journey of resilience, intelligence, and ambition. From being underestimated and unfairly fired, this man turned his pain into power, overcoming brutal challenges step by step until the day he sat in the very chair of ultimate power as the company's CEO. Across 8 chapters, you'll witness betrayal, shocking twists, bold decisions, and heart-stopping moments. Trust me, you'll feel angry, satisfied, and completely hooked until the very last second. If you love stories filled with drama and inspiration, don't forget to hit subscribe to Golden Gate Stories so you never miss an episode. This story will leave you surprised, entertained, and maybe even sleepless, because you'll want to know what happens next. If you ever feel like the universe is playing tricks on you, remember there's a man named Marcus Johnson who went through them all in a single Friday morning. Marcus, a black man in his mid-30s, worked as a mid-level manager in a flashy financial corporation in New York. He wasn't the type to walk into the office with a blazing red silk tie or shiny leather shoes, but he had a reputation as the company's best firefighter. When the computer system crashed, when a major client threatened to pull out, or when employees staged a walkout, people would say, "Let Marcus handle it." Yet the same company that once saw him as its silent hero turned him into disposable trash in less than an hour. That morning, as soon as Marcus stepped into the office, he sensed something was off. Strange stares, scattered whispers, and a silence so sharp he could hear the hum of the air conditioner. Moments later, the CEO's icy secretary appeared. "Mr. Marcus, the boss wants to see you." "Right now." Marcus raised an eyebrow. Right now rarely means anything good. Inside the boardroom sat Claire Anderson, the young, powerful CEO, known for her sharp mind and infamous temper. She sat with her cold eyes fixed on him. On the table lay a bright red folder, the color of warning, the color of an ending. "Marcus," Claire said firmly, "we value your contributions, but we're downsizing. Unfortunately, your position is on the list." Marcus froze. Then he let out a dry laugh. "Downsizing? I just saved this company from a collapsed deal last week. And this is my reward. A termination letter?" Claire didn't blink. "This decision comes from the board. It's strategic, not personal." But Marcus knew. Everything about this was personal. He had once confronted Claire in a meeting, exposing a deadly flaw in her project. And she, a proud woman, never forgot or forgave. He rose, clutching the folder tightly. His chest burned with rage, humiliation, and bitterness. Yet on his lips was a sarcastic smile. "Thank you, Claire. I suppose a world-class company like this never makes colossal mistakes, right? I'll be on my way. Let's see what happens next." The boardroom door shut. For most people, that would be the end. But for Marcus Johnson, this was only the beginning. What he didn't know was that Claire's impulsive decision that Friday morning would go down as the biggest mistake of her life. Marcus walked out of the boardroom, the bright red folder in his hand like a death certificate. The office was unusually quiet, as if everyone had known in advance, but no one dared to speak. Some colleagues buried their faces in their keyboards, pretending to be busy. Others stole glances at him, half pity, half relief, the kind of look that said, "Thank God it's not me this time." Marcus smirked. That was corporate life, where you could write an entire novel with just the language of stares. He didn't make a scene. No dramatic paper throwing or screaming fits like on TV. Instead, he quietly packed up his things, a few management books, a cheap wooden-framed family photo, and an old coffee mug that read, "World's Best Problem Solver." A gift someone had given him after he saved the company from a near-catastrophic deal. Ironic, really. The best problem solver in the world was now the one tossed out like trash. On his way to the elevator, Marcus crossed paths with Claire in the hallway. She was surrounded by a few board members, laughing confidently as if she had just fixed a major issue. When their eyes met, Claire said nothing. She gave him the slightest nod, cold, dismissive, as though Marcus had never existed. Marcus let out a dry chuckle. "Fine, Claire. Enjoy that false victory. We'll meet again." The elevator doors closed and Marcus's figure disappeared. To the company, that seemed like the last they would ever see of him. But life rarely plays out that simply. Outside, New York buzzed with skyscrapers and crowded streets. Marcus stepped out and drew a deep breath. Inside him, anger had transformed into a strange energy, a blend of pain and determination. He didn't yet know where to begin, but one thing was certain. This was not the end. It was only the prologue to a journey of revenge and triumph unlike any other. Marcus left the building and melted into the busy crowds of Manhattan. Unemployment was a strange feeling. One minute he was a manager at a prestigious financial corporation. The next he was just another face in the sea of people. No one cared. He wandered aimlessly until he stopped at a small corner cafe. Soft jazz played in the background. The smell of roasted beans and fresh pastries filled the air. Marcus picked a quiet table in the back, dropped his briefcase on the chair, and sat down as though the weight of the world had been thrown onto his shoulders. He ordered a black espresso and took a sip. The bitterness spread across his tongue. "Fitting," he muttered. "Bitter just like my morning." As he sat in thought, his phone buzzed. It was a text from his old colleague, James, the only one in the company who had ever dared to stand by him. The message was short. "Heard Claire screwed you over. I've got something to discuss." "Meet tonight?" Marcus smirked. James wasn't the type to waste words. If he wanted to meet, it meant something important. At that very moment, another scene caught Marcus's eye. At the next table, a group of young businessmen argued loudly over an investment deal. They tossed around massive numbers, tens of billions, and mentioned a corporation Marcus knew all too well, the very same company that had just fired him. His eyebrows rose as he leaned in. One of them opened a laptop flashing a presentation slide. Project Phoenix, Global Expansion Strategy. Marcus recognized it instantly. It was the same project he had once fiercely opposed, the one filled with enormous risks that the board, especially Claire, had chosen to ignore. Marcus's heart beat faster. In that moment, the future suddenly unfolded before him. Claire hadn't just fired the wrong guy, she was steering straight into a disaster. And he, the man pushed out the door, was the only one who truly understood the danger. Marcus took another sip of his espresso, his eyes glinting with determination. From inside a simple coffee shop, fate had just placed a clue in his hands. And he knew the game had only just begun. That evening, Marcus arrived at a small bar in Brooklyn, where dim golden lights spilled over worn wooden tables, creating an atmosphere that was half secret, half familiar. James was already there, a glass of whiskey in hand, his eyes gleaming with an unusual tension. "Marcus," James began as soon as he sat down, "do you know why Claire really fired you?" Marcus scoffed. "You think I don't? She's never gotten over the fact that I exposed the flaws in Project Phoenix." James nodded. "True, but it's worse than that. I've heard from inside sources. Claire is pushing the board to sign off on Phoenix within the next 3 months. We're talking billions. And guess what? If the project collapses, the company won't just lose money, it could go bankrupt." Marcus narrowed his eyes, fury mixing with intrigue. "She's willing to drive the company off a cliff just to prove me wrong?" James lowered his voice, staring directly at him. "Marcus, you know the flaws in Phoenix better than anyone. If there's one person who can stop Claire and save this company, it's you. But you can't do that from the outside, not as some unemployed guy they just kicked out." Marcus leaned back, a smile spreading, half sarcastic, half determined. "You're right. If I'm going to play this game, I need to get back on the board. And this time, I won't be a pawn. I'll be the one holding the whole board." James studied him, nodding slowly. "Then let's begin. I've got connections, and a few secrets about Claire you'll want to hear." Outside, the city still glowed with neon lights. But in the corner of this small bar, an alliance had just been forged. A plan for revenge was taking shape, and it would soon become Claire Anderson's worst nightmare. The next morning, Marcus woke up in his small Brooklyn apartment with a feeling that was both strange and fierce. Normally, after a blow like yesterday, most people would spiral into despair. But for Marcus, the collapse felt more like a spark that ignited long-buried ambition. He sat at his desk, holding an old notebook. Its yellowed pages were filled with ideas, analyses, and numbers he had once drafted for the company, all of which had been ignored by Claire and the board. Flipping through the pages, his eye stopped at one marked in red. Alternative strategy to Phoenix, a practical and safer solution. It was the plan he had once presented, only for Claire to dismiss with a single line. Too timid, too small for our global vision, too small, Marcus muttered bitterly. Small enough to save the company from bankruptcy. His phone rang. It was James. Marcus, I reached out to some old contacts. There are investors interested in the same field Phoenix is targeting, but they don't trust Claire. If you've got a solid plan, they're willing to listen. Marcus's lips curled into a sharp smile. Then they'll listen, not to a fired employee, but to a man on his way to becoming CEO. He spent the entire morning rewriting the plan. No more polished words to please the board, no more forced edits to flatter Claire. This time the plan bore Marcus's true signature. Direct, practical, and daring. Outside the window, the bright sun lit up noisy New York. But inside that small apartment, a new plan was being born. A plan that would change Marcus's fate, and the fate of the company that had crushed him. That afternoon, James brought Marcus to a luxury tower in the heart of Manhattan. On the 40th floor sat the offices of a renowned investment firm, where the decisions of a handful of people could change the fate of entire industries. Marcus adjusted his tie, nerves crawling under his skin, but his eyes burned with fire. This wasn't just a meeting, it was his chance to prove that Claire had fired the wrong man. Inside a glass-walled conference room, 2 investors were waiting. An older man with silver hair, and a gaze as cold as if he'd watched hundreds of projects collapse, and a younger woman whose sharp eyes contrasted with her encouraging smile. James began, "This is Marcus Johnson. He managed and analyzed strategy for Anderson Corporation. He has a different perspective on Project Phoenix that I believe you should hear." Marcus rose, calmly presenting. He opened his freshly rewritten plan, speaking clearly with no wasted words. He laid out every flaw in Phoenix, the risks Claire had deliberately hidden. Then he offered his alternative. No fluff, no empty promises, just solid numbers and a realistic strategy. The silver-haired investor raised an eyebrow, cutting in. "You sound confident, but you're no longer in the company. Why should we trust you?" Marcus fired back, his eyes sharp as blades. "Because I'm the only one in that company who dared to tell the truth. And that's why I was fired." Claire wanted me silenced. "But ask yourselves this. What scares a CEO more? An employee who lies or one who tells the truth?" Silence filled the room. The young woman studied Marcus, her lips curving slightly, as if she had just discovered a raw diamond. "Mr. Johnson," she said, "your story is intriguing. I want to hear more. Perhaps Claire just lost an asset more valuable than Project Phoenix itself." Marcus sat back down, his chest swelling with conviction. This was the first step, and he knew nothing would ever be the same again. The meeting seemed to end in silence, until the silver-haired investor leaned on the table, fixing his gaze on Marcus. "Mr. Johnson, I've heard your words, but I don't believe in words. I believe in numbers. If you truly have an alternative to Phoenix, prove it here and now. We'll give you a real scenario. If you can handle it, I'll consider you." The air in the room thickened. James shifted nervously, but Marcus leaned back, a smirk spreading across his lips. "Fine," he replied, "as long as it's fair and not some game rigged in Claire's favor." The young woman opened her laptop and turned the screen toward Marcus. On it was a mountain of data. Costs, market forecasts, and a hypothetical scenario involving a merger deal Claire's company was chasing. "Assume you're the CEO," she said. "What would you do to not only avoid risk but turn this deal into profit?" Marcus's eyes lit up. The same spark that once earned him the nickname, the best firefighter in the company. He began to break it down. "First, I'd cut 20% of the inflated marketing costs Claire is pushing. Second, instead of overexpanding in Europe, where the market is already saturated, I'd pivot to Southeast Asia, where growth potential is 3 times higher. Third," he went on, speaking rapidly as he scribbled across the whiteboard. Numbers, percentages, and risk scenarios formed a clear, undeniable picture. 15 minutes later, the room was silent. The silver-haired investor tapped his pen lightly, his mouth curving in a hard-to-read smile. The young woman stared at Marcus, unblinking, as if she'd just witnessed an underdog flip the entire game. Marcus set the marker down, folded his arms, and said, "That's what I'd do. No fluff, no illusions. Just reality and results." No one spoke right away, but in their eyes Marcus knew he had just planted a seed, and soon that seed would grow into his chance to return to the board of power. After Marcus's analysis, the room sank into a long silence. Only the ticking of the wall clock echoed, as if counting down the tension. Finally, the silver-haired investor set his pen down, his voice deep yet cold as a blade. "Mr. Johnson, you're smart. No one can deny that. But intelligence isn't enough. This arena isn't for those who can only talk and analyze. It's for those who can turn ideas into power and money." He leaned back in his chair, eyes cutting through Marcus. "If you want us to take you seriously, you'll need to prove you can raise at least $50 million. We don't invest in someone who can't inspire financial trust." "Nobody bets on a man who was just fired yesterday?" James froze, but Marcus laughed. The sound wasn't loud, but it echoed through the room like a challenge. $50 million? Less than 24 hours after being thrown out of a company? Sounds more like a cruel joke than a condition. The young woman tilted her head, curiosity sparking in her eyes. "Not a joke. Think of it as a test, to see if you're truly a big player or just a dreamer." Marcus was silent for a moment. Then he smiled, sharp and cold. "Fine, if that's the condition, I'll do it. But remember these words. When I come back with $50 million in hand, I won't be here begging for investment. I'll be here deciding who deserves to stand with me." The words froze the room. The silver-haired man gave a slight nod, while the young woman's smile deepened with intrigue. As they left the building, James blurted out, "Marcus, are you insane? $50 million? You planning to conjure it out of thin air?" Marcus shoved his hands into his pockets, staring up at the blazing skyscrapers. "No, James. I'll take it from the very people who underestimated me. And when I come back, Claire Anderson will never see it coming." That night, Marcus barely slept. The number $50 million haunted him like a mocking ghost. It wasn't just a financial challenge. It was the ultimate test to see if he truly deserved a seat back in the game. He sat by the window, staring at Brooklyn's flickering neon lights. In his hands was the old notebook, crammed with ideas long ignored by Claire and the board. He flipped through the pages, and for the first time, instead of asking, "What can this company do?" he asked himself, "What can I do when the whole world is against me?" The next morning, over untouched pancakes at a diner, Marcus told James bluntly, "James, I'm not begging anyone. I'll raise this money using my own ideas. And I need a list of everyone who turned their back on me. If they have money, now's the time they'll pay for it." James frowned. "You mean?" Marcus smirked. "I mean, I'll turn their arrogance into capital. They don't trust Claire, and they're terrified of missing out. I'll give them a choice: stand with me or be left behind." That very afternoon, Marcus began building his contact list. Old clients he had once saved from disaster, former partners Claire had alienated, anyone who remembered Marcus as the man who delivered results. He wasn't just chasing money. He was hunting sweet revenge, turning doubters into stepping stones. But Marcus knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy. $50 million was a number that could crush even seasoned veterans. He would need more than analysis. He'd need boldness, risk, and a touch of luck. Taking a sip of coffee, his eyes hardened. "Claire, you thought I was a disposable employee. Now watch. $50 million is just the beginning. When I return, I won't just take back my seat. I'll take the entire company." Outside, the midday sun lit up Manhattan like a giant chessboard, and Marcus Johnson had just made his first move in the battle to reclaim his destiny. The first name Marcus wrote down was Richard Campbell, a real estate mogul in New Jersey. Last year, when Richard nearly lost everything on a reckless investment, it was Marcus who reanalyzed the data and turned the deal around, saving him tens of millions. Marcus picked up the phone and dialed. 3 rings later, a deep, gravelly voice answered. "Marcus? Haven't heard from you in a while. I heard Claire kicked you out. You holding up?" Marcus chuckled. "Better than ever. Actually, I'm calling because I've got an opportunity. One I think only you would recognize the true value of." Richard paused, then let out a rough laugh. "An opportunity, huh? Go on. You know I don't like small talk." Marcus took a deep breath. "Remember Project Phoenix, the one Claire's obsessed with? It could sink the entire company. I've built an alternative, realistic, profitable, far less risky. But to prove it, I need capital. $50 million. And I want you to be the first to place your bet." A long whistle came through the line. "You're insane, Marcus. Fired yesterday, calling me today asking for 50 million?" Marcus smirked, his voice firm. "Not asking, Richard. I'm giving you the chance to buy a first-class ticket on the train that's going to crush Claire Anderson. You know I don't bluff. I saved you once. This is the second time. Only this time we both win big." Silence. Richard seemed to be weighing it over. Then his voice dropped, laced with intrigue. "You're bold, Marcus." "But I like bold. Send me the plan. If the numbers check out, I'll consider it. And who knows, Claire might never see the hit coming." Marcus hung up, his eyes blazing. A spark of hope had just been lit, and it was only the beginning. That night, Marcus sat in his small apartment, the yellow desk lamp shining over the pages he had carefully revised. His plan wasn't just numbers on paper, it was the weapon he'd use to win Richard Campbell over, and beyond that, his ticket back into the game. He hit send on the email with a short note. "Richard, study this closely. This isn't just a project, it's a chance to rewrite the rules." The next morning his phone rang. Richard's voice came slow and heavy. "Marcus, I've read it all. You've got 30 minutes. Get to my office now. Let's see if you're as good as you think." Richard's office sat inside a lavish mansion, towering glass doors and walls lined with fine art. Richard himself sat at the center, brandy in hand, Marcus's plan on the desk like scripture awaiting judgment. "Sit, Marcus." He pointed to the chair, then launched the barrage. "Page 12. Contingency costs. Why only 15%? The market fluctuates more than that." Page 24. Revenue forecasts. "Where's your data from? I don't buy pretty charts." Page 35. Southeast Asia strategy. "You really think you can compete there? Giants already rule the field." Questions fired like cannon shots. James, sitting beside Marcus, was sweating bullets, but Marcus remained calm, each answer sharp and steady, sometimes laced with dry sarcasm. 15% is enough, Richard. I'm not painting doomsday scenarios just to beg for more money. I give you the real number. Charts? I don't care about colors. I care about raw data. Here are my sources. Check them. Southeast Asia has giants, yes, which means holes everywhere for the one who knows where to slip in. I'm not going head-to-head. I'm exploiting what they ignore. After nearly an hour, Richard leaned back, eyes glowing like a man who had rediscovered the thrill of risk. He nodded slowly. "Marcus, you remind me of the first time I bet on a crazy deal, and I won. You've got what Claire doesn't, courage and realism." Richard stood and extended his hand. "All right, I'll invest. Not the full 50 million, but 10 million to get you started. Consider it a signal. Convince 4 more people like me, and you'll have your 50. Marcus shook his hand, his chest pounding. A piece of the capital was secured. More importantly, he had just proven he was no longer a discarded employee. He was on his way to becoming Claire's true rival. With 10 million secured from Richard, Marcus felt reinvigorated. But he knew the road to 50 million would never be a straight line. The first harsh lesson came the very next day. His next target was Ellen Brooks, a venture capital director who specialized in tech investments. Ellen was sharp, ruthless, and more importantly, once one of Claire Anderson's closest allies. James frowned when Marcus mentioned her name. "Ellen, are you serious?" She and Claire were inseparable. Going to her is like walking into the wolf's den. Marcus smirked, eyes steady. "Which is exactly why I need to try. If I can win Ellen, the entire investment community will have to take me seriously." The meeting took place in Ellen's sleek glass office on the 50th floor, overlooking all of Manhattan. She sat with her legs crossed, eyes sharp as blades, listening to Marcus's pitch without so much as a nod. When he finished, Ellen set her teacup down and said coldly, "You're impressive, Marcus, but delusional. Who are you? A man Claire just kicked out with no title, no backing, and you dare knock on my door asking for tens of millions? Laughable?" Marcus clenched his fists but kept a calm smile. "I'm not asking, Ellen, I'm offering. A chance to step ahead of Claire, to prove you're more than just her shadow." Ellen let out a dry, humorless laugh. "A chance? I don't need chances from an unemployed man. I need results. Come back when you actually have 50 million in hand. Until then, I've got more important things to do." She stood, signaling her assistant to open the door. The meeting ended as abruptly as a slap in the face. James sighed. "Told you, she'll never turn her back on Claire." Marcus walked down the hall, eyes still burning cold. That's fine. One door shuts, I'll open another, and one day Ellen Brooks will regret not shaking my hand today. After the humiliating rejection from Ellen Brooks, Marcus spent the evening alone in his small apartment, staring at a list of potential investors, most of them already crossed out. It felt like every door he knocked on slammed in his face. James sat across from him, discouraged. Marcus, we can't keep doing this. You've got 10 million from Richard, but to reach 50, that number is still a mountain. And Ellen, she's influential. Her refusal will make others wary. Marcus stayed silent, his eyes distant, gazing out the window. Inside him churned a storm of anger, determination, and exhaustion. Then his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I heard you left Anderson. If you're free, meet me at 9 a.m. tomorrow in Central Park. A.W. Marcus frowned. A.W. At first, he thought it was a prank, but James glanced at it and nodded. A.W. Could be Anthony White, an angel investor. I heard he pulled his money out of Anderson after a huge fight with Claire. If it's him, this could be big. The next morning, Marcus arrived at Central Park. In the crisp New York air, a white-haired man stood by a bench, coffee cup in hand. When Marcus approached, the man smiled faintly. Marcus Johnson, I've heard plenty about you. Claire hates you, which means you're probably right. Marcus chuckled. If that's the qualification for your attention, I'm honored. Anthony White's tone turned serious. I hear you've got an alternative to Phoenix. I want to see it. I also want to know, are you truly ready to take on Claire, or are you just a man chasing revenge? Marcus sat down, his eyes steady. I'm not just after revenge. I want to prove Claire is gambling the company on a fantasy, and I'll rebuild everything with truth. Anthony nodded slowly, as if this was the answer he had been waiting for. Good, I'll listen. But remember, Marcus, if you want 50 million, you'll need more than a plan. You'll need allies, and maybe I'll be one of them. Anthony White leaned back on the park bench, his eyes calm yet piercing, as if dissecting Marcus's every move. His voice was slow but razor-sharp. Marcus, I've invested in hundreds of people. Some promised the moon, some were smart but lacked fire. Which one are you? Marcus smiled, placing his notebook on the stone table and sliding it toward him. Take a look, and decide for yourself. Anthony flipped through the pages, the sound of crisp paper echoing in the quiet morning. He stopped at the Southeast Asia strategy, narrowing his eyes. You really believe you can break into this market? Giants have had roots there for decades. Marcus answered firmly. I'm not going head-to-head. I'm targeting the niches they ignore. Financial services for small and mid-sized businesses. Platforms nobody's building. Giants move slowly. I move fast. Anthony nodded slightly, then turned to operational costs. His brow furrowed. You've cut staffing by 20%. Do you think people are just numbers? A company can't survive if its employees turn their backs. Marcus met his gaze, voice dropping steady and deep. I'm not cutting people. I'm cutting the empty chairs Claire propped up for show. I'll keep the ones who do real work. And they'll be paid fairly, loyal to me, not the illusion. A silence hung between them. Anthony set the notebook down, leaning forward, eyes filled with both challenge and respect. You speak well, Marcus, but theory only gets you halfway. I want proof. If I gave you $1 million right now, how would you turn it into 5 in 3 months? James, sitting beside Marcus, jolted. $1 million? Just as a test? Marcus, that's a trap. But Marcus lifted his hand, cutting him off, a sharp smile curling his lips. It's fine. If you want proof, I'll give you proof. And when I turn 1 million into 5, you'll know without a doubt, I'm not just the man who got fired. I'm the CEO to come. Anthony White burst out laughing, his voice booming across the park, tinged with both satisfaction and challenge. Good. Then let's see what you can do, Marcus Johnson. That very afternoon, Marcus's account lit up with a transfer, $1,000 from Anthony White's personal fund. Attached was a short message. 3 months. Don't disappoint me. Marcus stared at the screen, his heart pounding. He had never held this much money in his life, but instead of fear, adrenaline surged through his veins. This was the chance, the kind where failure would bury him forever, but success would put him on the board as a true player. James, however, couldn't hide his anxiety. Marcus, what are you going to do with this money? Stocks? Real estate? Tripling or quintupling it in 3 months. It sounds like gambling. Marcus shook his head, a mysterious smile tugging at his lips. Not gambling. I know a gap Claire and Anderson overlooked. A market no one bothered to see, because they thought it was too small. But that too small market is about to explode into gold. He pulled up a new plan on his laptop, pointing at a red-marked section. Financial platform for small and medium businesses. Southeast Asia. Claire is too busy chasing global fantasies, ignoring mid-sized enterprises. I'll move in first, create a simple, cheap platform that can scale fast. In 3 months, I don't need an empire. I just need proof the market is starving for this. Once the first revenue flows in, Anthony will understand, and 50 million won't be far. James gaped. You're starting a company? With just 1 million? Marcus smirked, his eyes blazing. No, I'm starting a story. When the story is strong enough, the money will find its way. And this time, the story begins with 1 million and ends with the CEO's throne. Outside the window, Manhattan glowed like a giant chessboard, each skyscraper a looming piece. And Marcus Johnson, once the man cast out, was now moving his first piece in the game of giants, with $1 million as his opening move. The very next morning, Marcus sat in a shabby Brooklyn cafe, staring at a piece of paper scrawled with the words, "Core team must be absolutely trusted." He knew one thing for sure. To turn 1 million into 5 in 3 months, he couldn't do it alone. The first person he called was Lena Carter, a software engineer who had left Anderson after Claire dismissed her ideas. Lena was brash, blunt, and famously resentful of Claire. When Marcus pitched his idea, she burst out laughing. "You're planning to go to war with that witch? Count me in. I'd rather work with you in a coffee shop than spend another day under her heel." The second was David Kim, a young but razor-sharp financial analyst who had applied to Anderson 3 times, only to be rejected for lack of experience. Marcus saw in David's eyes the same fire he once had, the hunger to prove himself. "Give me a chance," David said, voice trembling but eyes blazing. "I'll work day and night. I want to prove Claire was wrong to overlook me." Finally, there was Maria Lopez, a marketing expert who had briefly collaborated with Marcus in the past. Maria knew how to turn an idea into a story investors couldn't ignore. She smirked at the plan. "Only 1 million? Perfect. Constraints force creativity. I'll make sure this project becomes a name the press can't stop talking about." Around that worn wooden table, 4 people, Marcus, Lena, David, and Maria, placed their hands on the plan. No lavish offices, no leather chairs, just faith, bottled-up anger, and a burning determination to turn failure into fire. Marcus looked at each of them, his voice firm. "From this moment, we're no longer the discarded. We're the vanguard, and in the next 3 months, we'll write a story the whole world will have to hear." Outside, New York roared with its usual chaos, but inside that tiny cafe, the seeds of an empire were planted, born from $1 million and 4 people who believed in a man freshly fired. The first week, the team worked out of a tiny Brooklyn cafe. No flashy screens, no polished boardrooms, just 4 old laptops, a few cheap cups of coffee, and a mountain of pressure. Lena clacked furiously on her keyboard, frustrated. "Marcus, our test system runs slower than a turtle. Without stronger servers, I can't build the platform properly." David buried his head in spreadsheets. "We've only got 1 million. A third's already gone to infrastructure, and the rest is nearly spent. How am I supposed to manage cash flow without another investor?" Maria smirked as she scribbled ad copy, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "You think you've got problems? Try making the press care about a project that doesn't even exist yet. They won't touch it unless it's a hot, dramatic story." The room went heavy. Marcus looked at his 3 teammates, their eyes burning with determination, but deep down, he knew. Turning 1 million into 5 in 3 months was no joke. He stood, his voice firm. "I know this is hard, but remember, Claire has the fancy office, the hundreds of staff, but she lacks what we have, hunger and truth. We don't need to conquer the world overnight. We just need one breakthrough. Our first client, our first signal." Silence. Then Lena let out a sharp laugh. "Fine, Marcus. Then go find that first client. Give me a reason to burn midnight oil with this lousy laptop." Marcus nodded. He knew exactly who to call. A small business in Queens he had once helped with free financial advice years ago. If he could convince them to try the platform, he'd have something more valuable than capital. Proof that the idea worked. Outside, light rain fell over New York, but inside the cafe, 4 people stayed glued to their screens. And in that moment, the journey to turn 1 million into 5 truly began, with a first step full of obstacles. That afternoon, Marcus pulled on a raincoat and took the subway to Queens. The windows fogged with condensation, the city outside gray and wet, but inside him, a spark of hope burned bright. His destination, Rodriguez and Sons, a family print shop Marcus had once saved from bankruptcy with a simple piece of financial advice. Don't borrow to pay debt. Rebuild your cash flow starting with loyal customers. That advice had kept them afloat ever since. When he walked in, Marcus found old Mr. Rodriguez wiping ink-stained hands on a rag. The man looked up, surprised. "Marcus, my God, it's been years. I heard you left Anderson. You doing all right?" Marcus smiled. "Doing fine, my friend. Actually, I'm here because I need your help. My team and I are building a financial platform for small and mid-sized businesses, just like Rodriguez and Sons, and I want you to be the very first client." Mr. Rodriguez frowned, chuckling. "First client? Marcus, you know I trust you. But why should I risk it? I've survived this long. I'm not about to gamble my cash flow on something untested." Marcus nodded. No excuses. He opened his laptop, pulling up the crude demo Lena had built. The interface was rough, even ugly. But when Marcus input the shop's sample numbers, the screen instantly showed a detailed report: profit, cash flow, wasted costs, and suggested reallocations. Mr. Rodriguez's eyes widened. "Wait, this would tell me exactly how much I'm losing and how to adjust next month." Marcus's gaze was steady. "Yes, and this is only the prototype. Give me 3 months, and I promise to make it a tool every small business will need. But I need you to trust me one more time, like you did years ago." Silence hung for a beat. Then Mr. Rodriguez clapped Marcus on the shoulder, laughing heartily. "You're crazy, Marcus. But I like crazy. All right, Rodriguez and Sons will be your first client. But don't you dare let me down." Marcus smiled. He knew this moment was worth more than Richard's 10 million. It was proof that his idea wasn't just words on paper. It touched real life. And from one little print shop in Queens, the first spark had been lit. A week after Rodriguez and Sons agreed to join, Marcus's team practically lived in the cafe. Lena was buried in code, David drowning in spreadsheets, Maria working around the clock, drafting content and pitching to the press. When the prototype was finally ready, Marcus decided to launch a limited trial, only 5 small businesses in New York, with Rodriguez and Sons as the pioneer client. On launch day, the whole team crowded around the wooden table. Lena hit launch, and the screen lit up. Prototype active, user Bajauzo1, Rodriguez and Sons. Silence for a moment, then cheers like kids watching fireworks. But the celebration didn't last. One of the 5 trial businesses, a bakery, called frantically, "Your software just miscalculated last month's cash flow. We can't trust a faulty system." Lena's face went pale. She scrambled through the logs. "It's not the system's fault. They entered bad data." "But still," Marcus cut her off. "Clients don't care whose fault it is. All they see is the wrong result. We fix it now. And more importantly, we show them we're on their side." Maria immediately drafted a short message to all 5 trial clients. "We are a startup committed to small businesses. If there are mistakes, we take responsibility first, and we'll work tirelessly to fix them." When the message went out, something surprising happened. Instead of piling on criticism, 2 other clients replied, "At least you admit mistakes and respond fast. That's something big companies never do." Marcus smiled. He knew this moment was more valuable than flawless code. They had just turned an error into trust. That night, Rodriguez emailed Marcus a short note. "You were right, Marcus. This platform can save businesses like ours. I'll introduce you to 2 friends." Marcus stared at the words, his eyes burning with conviction. They hadn't made a cent yet. But what they now had was more valuable than money. The market's first trust. Within just 2 weeks, Maria had turned their tiny prototype into a story. She didn't pitch the software as a boring tool. She framed it as the journey of a group of cast-off ex-employees building a financial lifeline for small businesses. A local business paper quickly ran the headline, "From Fired to Founder, Can $1 Million Change? How Small Businesses Manage Cash Flow." The article spread faster than expected. Small businesses from Brooklyn and Queens began calling Marcus asking how they could join. Even a finance blogger wrote, "While giants like Anderson chase billion-dollar fantasies, a small team is hitting the real pain points of everyday businesses." At the cafe, the team devoured pizza while reading comments, cheering between bites. David was ecstatic. "We haven't made money yet, but the market is coming to us." This is demand chasing supply. Marcus stayed quiet, though his chest burned with fire. He knew attention was a double-edged sword, and as he feared, the blade soon swung back. One evening, James burst into the cafe, phone in hand. "Marcus, the news just reached Claire. She's called an emergency board meeting at Anderson. Looks like she suspects our project is the threat." The cafe fell silent. Lena clenched her fists, teeth grinding. "Let's see what Claire does. If she underestimates us, we win ground. But if she decides to strike first?" Marcus smirked, his voice sharp with defiance. "Let her strike. Every blow Claire throws will only prove we're on the right path. And I swear this time, it won't be me who falls." Outside, New York's skyline blazed with light. But in the shadows, the silent war between Marcus and Claire had officially begun, and from a $1 million project, a billion-dollar battle was taking shape. In the glass skyscraper of Anderson Corporation, Claire Anderson stood before the board, her eyes razor-sharp. She slammed her palm against the polished wooden table, her voice ringing like a command. "Do you see what's happening? A group of discarded nobodies built a so-called financial platform, and now the press is praising them as heroes. If we don't crush this now, Anderson's reputation will be buried." One board member cautiously spoke. "Claire, it's just a tiny project. $1 million is nothing compared to the billions we control. Perhaps we don't need—" Claire cut him off, eyes blazing. "That kind of thinking is exactly how startups steal markets from giants. Don't you get it? A single spark can burn down a forest. And Marcus Johnson? He is the one man I will never allow back on the board." The very next day, Claire struck back. Anderson launched a massive PR campaign, announcing Phoenix 2.0, a superior, safer version compared to any small-scale startups. They invited top financial journalists, bought out ad pages, and pushed subtle smear articles. Amateur startups only expose small businesses to more risks. Only Anderson has the credibility to protect clients. Back in the Brooklyn cafe, Marcus and his team stared at the headlines. Maria sighed. "She moves fast. A PR campaign worth millions. If we fight her head-on, she'll crush us." David slammed his fist on the table. "This isn't fair. We have the real product and she's selling empty promises." Marcus stayed silent for a moment. Then he chuckled, eyes glinting with resolve. "Exactly. She has promises. We have truth, and truth defends itself. Claire's counterattack proves only one thing. She's afraid." He stood, voice firm. "If she wants a war, fine. But this time, we won't just defend. We'll attack. And our first strike? We'll hit Phoenix directly." The team looked at Marcus, eyes filled with both worry and excitement. The real war had begun. In their usual Brooklyn cafe, the team huddled around the worn wooden table, faces tense but eyes burning with resolve. Marcus opened his laptop, projecting confidential files he had kept from his time at Anderson. "This is the heart of Phoenix," he said, pointing at the cost analysis chart. "Claire hit a massive debt from importing European tech. If Phoenix fails, Anderson won't just lose billions, it could collapse entirely." David nodded, voice shaky but firm. "These numbers. If we publish them, Phoenix is exposed as a ticking time bomb. But we'll need confirmation. If we rely only on your old files, investors will claim we made it up." Maria leaned forward, eyes glittering with cunning. "And then we create a story the press can't ignore. A leak. An insider willing to speak. That kind of news spreads faster than any PR campaign Claire can buy." Lena frowned. "An insider? Who would dare betray Claire? She rules Anderson with fear." Marcus smirked, eyes cold. "Not everyone is loyal out of fear. I know a few who've long been resentful but kept silent. Now's the time to show them they're not alone." James, sitting in the corner, spoke cautiously. "Marcus, this makes the war public. Once you expose Phoenix's flaws, Claire will see you as her mortal enemy. There'll be no turning back." Marcus locked eyes with each teammate, his voice steady and grave. "The way back was cut off the day she fired me. This isn't personal anymore. It's our chance to prove truth can topple an empire built on lies." The cafe grew thick with silence. Then Maria broke it, lips curling into a sly smile. Fine. If we're playing, we play big. Let the press call tomorrow the day Phoenix cracked. The team burst into laughter. Not joyous, but sharp, defiant. It echoed like a declaration of war across the darkening New York sky. That night, Marcus received an anonymous message on a secure app. I know you're looking for information. Meet me at 11 p.m. in the Hudson Tower parking garage. K. Marcus read it, paused, then smiled. K. I know who that is. K was Kevin Tran, a mid-level manager at Anderson who had worked with Marcus for years. Kevin was known for being blunt and had clashed with Claire more than once when he questioned her numbers. If anyone had the guts to stand up, it was Kevin. At 11 p.m., the parking garage was nearly deserted, lit only by flickering neon lights. Kevin appeared in a long coat, clutching a briefcase, his eyes darting nervously as if committing a crime. Marcus, Kevin whispered, his voice trembling slightly. I don't have much time. Claire's hiding more than you think. Phoenix isn't just risky. It's a ticking bomb. They've cross-leveraged loans from 3 different banks. If one domino falls, the whole system crashes. Marcus narrowed his eyes. I'm guessing Claire kept this off the board's books. Kevin nodded sharply, handing Marcus the briefcase. Exactly. These are copies of the loan agreements and the latest balance sheets. If this goes public, Anderson will have to answer. But Marcus, be careful. Claire won't hesitate to destroy anyone who defies her. Marcus gripped the case tightly, his eyes blazing. Thank you, Kevin. You didn't just save me. You may have saved hundreds of small businesses Phoenix would drag down with it. Kevin sighed, turning away, his figure disappearing into the flickering light. Marcus watched him go, knowing they had both stepped onto a battlefield. On his way back, Marcus texted Maria, We have the weapon. Get ready for tomorrow. Phoenix will crack. The next morning, Maria sent a carefully crafted email to one of America's top financial newspapers. The subject line was short but heavy. Leaked documents show Phoenix as a ticking debt bomb. Attached were the loan agreements and balance sheets Kevin had provided. Within hours, the article hit the front page. Phoenix, a billion-dollar project, or Anderson's time bomb? The story spread like wildfire. Financial news channels rushed to cover it. Analysts pointed at the balance sheets, warning, if these numbers are accurate, Anderson is gambling with its life. This is recklessly dangerous. In the cafe, Marcus's team stared at the TV screen. David nearly shouted, We did it! This will put a huge question mark on Phoenix. Maria sipped her coffee, lips curling into a sharp smile. Not just a question mark, the first crack. But at Anderson headquarters, the atmosphere was explosive. Claire Anderson slammed the newspaper onto the table, her voice thundering, Marcus Johnson! He thinks he can play dirty with me? Find out who leaked these documents. Every single one of them. And when I know, I'll crush them. One board member spoke cautiously. Claire, investors are panicking. Stock dropped 7% just this morning. Claire snapped her head around, eyes blazing. The stock will bounce back. But Marcus won't. I'll make him the example. For anyone who dares betray Anderson. Meanwhile, Marcus sat quietly in the corner of the cafe, eyes fixed on the article. He knew he had just fired the first real shot. The war was no longer in the shadows. It was blazing in. The Phoenix scandal spread like wildfire. Anderson's stock plummeted. Investors argued furiously, and for the first time, the name Marcus Johnson appeared on television as the thorn in Claire Anderson's side. While Marcus's team was still celebrating, Claire's storm struck. 3 days after the article, Anderson's lawyers delivered an official notice to Marcus. Demand for damages due to disclosure of confidential information and harm to the company. The demand, $100 million. David's face went pale as he tossed the papers on the table. $100 million? They're trying to kill us with lawsuits. We don't even have an office, let alone $100 million. Lena gritted her teeth. This is a scare tactic. Claire doesn't care if she wins in court. She just wants to bleed us dry. Maria smirked, her eyes flashing with defiance. Perfect. The more she sues, the more the press digs. The louder she screams, the more obvious it becomes we've hit a nerve. Marcus sat still, flipping through the lawsuit pages. Every word weighed heavy, but instead of breaking, he lifted his head, eyes cold as steel. Claire thinks I'll be scared? She forgets one thing. I've got nothing left to lose. She's the one with an empire cracking beneath her feet. He turned to the team, his voice strong. We don't back down. We fight back, not just with the media, but with results. I want a paying client in 2 weeks. Once revenue shows up, every accusation will be meaningless. The team exchanged looks, worry shifting into resolve. Maria nodded. Fine. If Claire wants a war, we'll give her a war she never saw coming. Outside, New York's sky grew dark, wind howling through the streets as if heralding a storm. And indeed, the storm named Claire Anderson had begun, but Marcus Johnson was ready to stand tall. In their small Brooklyn cafe room, the tension was heavier than ever. The $100 million lawsuit sat on the table like an unexploded bomb. Marcus looked at each teammate, his voice firm. The only way to fight Claire is to prove we're not a fantasy. We need real clients, and they have to pay. Maria tapped the table, her eyes lighting up. I'll handle the press. I'll spin the lawsuit into our advantage. A billion-dollar corporation afraid of a $1 million startup. Tell me that's not headline gold. David jumped in, urgent. Press is good, but we need numbers. Just one company willing to pay, and the balance sheet itself becomes our defense. Lena smirked, her eyes still glued to her laptop. Then I'll upgrade the system. No bugs this time. If a client's paying, we make damn sure they get their money's worth. Marcus nodded, then scrolled through his old contacts. His eyes stopped at one name. Greenline Logistics, a mid-sized transport company in the Bronx that had nearly collapsed from poor cash flow management. He'd once given them a temporary fix, but now they needed a real system. Greenline, Marcus murmured as if naming a decisive chess piece. They'll be our first target. If we land them as a paying client, we'll have our answer for Claire. James frowned. But Marcus, Greenline's tough. They've turned down plenty of big-name software for being too complicated. If they say no, Marcus cut him off, eyes steady. If they say no, we move on. But if they say yes, we won't just have a client. We'll have a story. A startup sued for $100 million lands its first contract. And that will be the hardest slap Claire's ever taken. The team sat in silence for a beat, then nodded in unison. A new target was set. Outside, New York's sky was clearing after a night of rain. Marcus clenched the contact sheet in his hand. The lawsuit could kill them on paper, but one paying client could save the dream, and he swore he wouldn't let Claire steal that chance. That morning, Marcus donned his old but neatly pressed suit and, with James, drove a rented car to Greenline Logistics in the Bronx. The 3-story building was worn, its sign faded, but inside was a lifeline of trucks, drivers, and customers surviving day by day on cash flow. In a small conference room, Marcus sat across from Evelyn Green, the CEO, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with a seasoned, skeptical gaze. Mr. Johnson, Evelyn began, I've read the papers. The whole country calls you Claire Anderson's challenger. But to me that's just noise. I need real solutions. What do you have that should make me sign a contract? Marcus opened his laptop and presented the platform. He input Greenline sample data, revenue from major clients, fuel costs, truck maintenance, and bank loans. Within seconds, the system flagged a glaring hole. 30% of operating costs trapped in late payments. This, Marcus said firmly, is your money lying dormant. If you restructure this cash flow, Greenline saves at least $200,000 every quarter. And that's just the beginning. Evelyn stared at the screen, then gave a dry laugh. Impressive, but why should I trust you? Who are you? A man Claire kicked out, leading a startup being sued for $100 million. And you expect me to stake my business on something this fragile? The air froze. James glanced nervously at Marcus, but Marcus didn't flinch. He met Evelyn's gaze, voice low and sharp. You're right. I don't have a billion-dollar empire behind me. That's exactly why I have no choice but to succeed. Claire can fail and still live in luxury. I can't. If you want a partner who will fight for every dollar of your profit, there's no one better than me. Silence hung in the room. Evelyn folded her arms, her eyes flickering. Then she spoke slowly. I won't sign yet, but I'll give you a trial. In 3 weeks, if your system cuts at least 10% of my real costs, I'll sign a paying contract. If not, she stood, extending her hand as, you'll just be another name on the list of men who talk big but deliver small. Marcus gripped her hand, a sharp smile breaking across his face. Deal. Consider this your chance to see just how wrong Claire was to fire me. As they left the building, James exhaled.
Marcus, 3 weeks.
This isn't a trial. It's a knife at our throat. Marcus looked up at the gray Bronx sky, his eyes blazing. Exactly. and I've never fought more clearly than this. Back at the Brooklyn Cafe, the team sat in silence after Marcus explained Evelyn Green's condition. 3 weeks, no more no less. The weight of it pressed down like an invisible rope tightening around their throats. Lena slammed the table. 3 weeks? Marcus, are you kidding me? I need at least 2 months to refine the algorithm, and they expect a 10% cost reduction in real-world results. That's like asking me to build a suspension bridge without pillars. David raked his hands through his hair. We've only got $1 million and less than $700,000 left after infrastructure. If we can't prove value in 3 weeks, Greenline will walk. And then that $100 million lawsuit will bury us. Maria stayed calm, her eyes gleaming with fire. Don't forget, this is the headline the media will devour. A startup's 3-week battle against a billion-dollar empire. If we succeed, we won't just have one client, we could have dozens. Marcus listened, then stood, looking each of them in the eye. His voice was firm, unwavering. I don't need a perfect bridge, Lena. I need a path strong enough for Greenline to trust. We don't have to deliver a masterpiece right now. We just need real results, and results so clear no one can deny them. He laid out the plan. Lena would focus on stabilizing the system, building a version solid enough to handle real data. David would craft a custom forecast model for Greenline, using their history to generate instant savings recommendations. Maria would prepare a media strategy, ready to explode the story if Greenline's trial succeeded. James sighed, then nodded. All right. 3 weeks. No sleep, no breaks. If this is a knife at our throats, then let's turn it into our weapon. Outside, New York glowed under the nightlights, its restless pulse mirroring the tiny startup's own heartbeat. They knew the coming days would be hell, but from that hell, an empire might be born. On the first day of the 3-week trial, the team gathered in their usual cafe. On the wall, Marcus taped up a giant sheet of paper scrawled with the words, 21 days, no mistakes. Each morning, he crossed out a day in red marker, like a funeral bell tolling louder with every stroke. The work atmosphere was suffocating. Lena practically lived in front of her laptop, eyes sunken, fingers blistered from nonstop typing. She muttered under her breath, No crashes, no crashes. If the system goes down, we're dead. David drowned in Greenline's real data. He found bizarre inconsistencies, unlogged driver overtime, fuel bills spiking on weekends. He tore at his hair, shouting, This isn't a software problem. It's terrible management. How am I supposed to turn this chaos into a clean report for Evelyn? Maria, however, thrived under pressure. She smirked as she typed up a pitch for her journalist contacts. A startup sued for $100 million tries to save a Bronx trucking company. Can it pull it off? That'll get Wall Street buzzing. Marcus stood at the center, neither yelling nor pushing. He quietly walked around, resting a hand on each teammate's shoulder, whispering, Push a little harder. We're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every small business strangled by giants like Anderson. By nightfall, the cafe was empty of customers, lit only by dim yellow lamps on their exhausted but determined faces. The wall clock ticked mockingly, every second dragging them closer to Judgment Day. Marcus looked at the paper on the wall. The number 21 glared in red, a reminder time is not on their side. Yet he smiled, eyes blazing with fire. That's exactly why we'll make every day count. On the 5th day, Marcus and David went to Greenline's office to deliver a preliminary report. Evelyn Green sat with her arms crossed, her eyes cold as ice, waiting for their presentation. David opened his laptop, his voice shaky as he explained, We analyzed last week's data. If you cut overtime fuel costs, you'll save around $15,000 next month. Evelyn glanced at the figure, raising an eyebrow. 15,000? My company spends over $2 million a quarter. You think scraps like that will make me sign? I don't need pretty reports. I need real results. And I need them now. The room went heavy. David flushed, speechless. Marcus, however, smiled calmly. We understand, and you'll get results. But remember, this system doesn't just find costs. It changes how you manage. For it to work, Greenline must work with us. Are you ready for that? Evelyn was silent for a moment, then gave a dry laugh. You dare challenge me in my own office? Fine, I'll give you a chance. But I want more. You'll oversee one of my toughest routes, the Bronx-Philadelphia line. If you prove actual savings there, I'll consider signing. As they left the office, David nearly exploded. She's not just testing the software, she's testing us. This is a trap. If we fail, she'll humiliate us instantly. Marcus clenched his fist, eyes blazing. Exactly. But it's also the opportunity. If we succeed on her hardest route, she'll have no excuse left. And once Green Line signs, others will line up. That night in the cafe, the team sat exhausted but their eyes burning. Maria smirked. A double test of the product and of us. Sounds like survival mode, doesn't it? But if we win, we won't just land a client.
We'll have a story that keeps Claire awake at night. Marcus nodded, his voice low and steady.
Then get ready. 3 weeks are now 2. The coming days will be hell. But from hell, we'll rise with wings. On a freezing morning, Marcus, David, and Lena boarded a Green Line truck to monitor the Bronx-Philadelphia route firsthand. It was the company's nightmare line. Long distance, high fuel costs, and constant delays caused by drivers gaming their hours. In the passenger seat, David clutched his laptop, hooked directly into GPS and fuel invoice data. He muttered, "If we can pinpoint the leak here, we'll have undeniable proof for Evelyn." The truck rattled down rough roads. Lena stared at her phone screen, running the patched app she'd coded overnight. Occasionally, a red alert flashed. Unusual fuel increase detected. Midway, they stopped at a small gas station. Marcus noticed the driver whispering with the clerk, then signing an invoice higher than the actual fill. Marcus frowned, signaling David to check. Minutes later, David exhaled sharply. This is it, inflated invoices. Each trip they skim an extra $200, $300. Green Line loses tens of thousands a week without knowing. Marcus glanced at Lena, who nodded firmly. The app can flag this pattern. If we present it, Evelyn can't deny it. By the time they reached Philadelphia that afternoon, Marcus compiled all the data. The report revealed a staggering truth. Green Line was losing over 12% of its route costs to fuel fraud. David was ecstatic. "We've got it, Marcus." Real results, stronger than any forecast. Marcus stayed silent, his eyes burning. He knew this could change everything, but he also knew exposing it meant stepping on powerful toes, and those people wouldn't stay quiet. As the truck rumbled back toward the Bronx under the night sky, Marcus thought grimly, this isn't just Green Line's test, this is the battlefield itself. The next morning, Marcus and his team walked into Green Line's headquarters. In his hands was a thick report, packed with undeniable numbers. Evelyn Green sat at the head of the table, her eyes sharp, flanked by 3 mid-level managers, including the very driver Marcus had observed the day before. Marcus laid the report before her, his voice steady. We've uncovered that Green Line is losing over 12% of costs on the Bronx-Philadelphia route. The cause? Inflated fuel invoices and operational fraud. Here's the evidence. Evelyn flipped through the pages. The numbers were so clear that silence fell across the room. But immediately, the manager to her left, face flushed red, slammed his fist on the table. This is nonsense. Outsiders accusing us of fraud? Their data is fake, unreliable. David shot back, eyes blazing. Not fake. Every figure was pulled directly from GPS and Green Line's own invoices. If you want, we can cross-check every single trip for the last 3 months. The tension spiked. Evelyn looked up, her gaze drilling into Marcus. Mr. Johnson, are you 100% certain of this conclusion? Marcus met her eyes without blinking. I'm ready to sign my name to every number. And if I'm wrong, Green Line can terminate the contract immediately. A pause. Then Evelyn exhaled and abruptly turned to the manager, her voice sharp as steel. Explain to me, right now, why your invoices match the fraud they've uncovered. The man stammered, his face draining of color. Whispers erupted across the room. Clearly, suspicions had existed, but no one dared speak. Evelyn slammed the report on the table. Enough. Marcus Johnson, you've shown me the truth this system was hiding. I'll cut every staff member involved in this fraud. And if your platform continues proving its value over the next 2 weeks, Green Line will sign a full contract. The team held their breath, then let it out in relief. But Marcus didn't smile. He knew they'd just scored a victory, while also angering those profiting from corruption. As they left the building, Maria whispered, Marcus, you've made yourself a target, not just for Claire, but for people inside Green Line, too. Marcus tightened his grip on the report, his eyes hard with resolve. To change a rotten system, you accept being the thorn. And I've learned to live as one. Outside, the Bronx sky blazed bright after a night of rain. But Marcus knew the true storm had only just begun.